Let's have this conversation about reparations. So reparations is pretty interesting, um, and I think that we need to have this conversation because it's happening more and more in a lot of other cities. Reparations is happening, and it started in like Asheville, then it's now over in Illinois, and it's beginning to be less of a popular word, but it's actually beginning to be a real thought process and a real actions behind it. I had the privilege of going to a city council meeting, workshop today, and a lot of good information was going on in there. You know, of course, there was no conversation about reparations, but there are city council individuals in other cities and other states that's talking about reparations. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna bring this video up. Again, as you can see, the phone number, if you want to call in, you can call 254-768-7203. That's 254-768-7203. And I'll pull you in. You'll be able to speak from your point of view about reparations. So let's bring in this video and we're going to dissect it a little bit. And from your point of view, from where you are, and I want you to communicate about how you feel. We can even go into talk about reparations from your point of view. How should reparations be? How do we start the conversation about reparations? And how do you feel we can begin to implement reparations in your community, wherever you are? If you're in Houston, if you're in Dallas, if you're in Beaumont, if you're in Killeen, if you're in Harker Heights, whatever it is, everyone has their own city council and their own thought process about reparations. So if you have a concept and an idea about reparations, go ahead and drop that inside the chat. So without further ado, let's begin to dissect this video. So it was pretty dope. If you can hear, let me know. If you cannot, let me know.
Hundreds of spectators
so I can
Congress to witness a hearing that many hope would be a step towards the U.S. government taking accountability for the wrongs of slavery.
Can we get that door closed?
Yep, the R word. Reparations.
The typical black family in this country has 1/10 the wealth of the typical white family. The matter of reparations is one of making amends and direct redress, but it is also a question of citizenship.
Despite the sense of promise inspired by that late spring day on Capitol Hill, the bill has yet to make any significant progress. Black folks in the U.S. could argue things haven't been easy since they were promised 40 acres and a mule more than 150 years ago. Although it's difficult to place a dollar amount on the historic injustices experienced by Black people, reparations are seen by many as a starting point for addressing a long legacy of systemic oppression and racism that has helped shape the Black experience in this country.
You could at least lift up off the ground, bro. We wouldn't even trip, bro.
The lack of movement of this federal reparations bill hasn't deterred politicians on the level from taking matters into their own hands.
Starting on January 1st, 2020, all recreational cannabis retailer tax will be transferred to the reparation fund until the fund has...
In the last year, the city of Evanston made history.
A reparation policy is our best step in repairing the demonstrable damages to Black families, Black neighborhoods, Black institutions, and Black businesses.
Alderman.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin.
No.
Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
That night, Evanston City Council became the first governing body in the U.S. at any level to explicitly enact reparations for Black residents.
All right, let's talk about this. So I did look up this resolution and I did read through it. About this resolution is they found a way to actually raise the money. What they're doing right now in Evansville, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read it, and it's pretty smart what they did. So it was actually signed in November of 2019. So in Evansville City Council adopted Resolution 126R19 establishing the City of Evanston Reparations Fund and the Reparations Subcommittee. Whereas the City Council committed the first $10 million of the city's municipal cannabis retailers occupation tax, which is 3% on gross sales of cannabis, to fund local reparations for housing and economic development programs for Black Evanston residents. So what they did was actually to go out and find the funds in order to begin to fund Black people, you know, with housing. So reading even into the resolution from the city council, what they're going to do is actually supposed to be implemented mid-summer of 2021 this year. So where they really going to start, first of all, they're going to start with the housing. So if you haven't heard or you haven't looked up the history or you haven't seen the video when it's talking about redlining and stuff like that, I think for them that's a pretty positive start, you know, from that perspective. And what they're going to do is they're going to, now I don't know what type of rubric or they're going to use to begin to qualify individuals that's going to actually be given this money. So what happens is you have to fill out this qualification application, and from the application, once you are awarded the funds, which is in a total of $25,000 for home ownership, which you're going to see there's a young lady inside of this interview that's going to be talking about how the reparations to help her out. Now, one of the things that I loved about what she said was, she said, I just need a little push. You know, reparations is just going to give it a little push. She said, I can pedal on my own, but I just need a little push. And I really liked how she said that. So let's go ahead and get back in it.
As local reparations become more of a possibility, observers speculate that the city's efforts could serve as a template for others to follow.
All right, Resolution 126-R-19 establishing a City of Evanston funding source to vote local reparations passes on a 8-1 vote.
Since then, Asheville, North Carolina, and Chicago, along with the state of California, have all passed reparations legislation, although Evanston is the only place with an actual plan. Despite this feat, leaders in this wealthy, progressive college town have their work cut out for them. Here, white families out-earn their black neighbors by an average of nearly $46,000. And that's not by accident. Local historian and archivist Dino Robinson breaks down how policy designed by white leaders of the past created these disparities. Can you describe to me the history of redlining specific to Evanston?
What's interesting with Evanston is that the Fifth Ward was a centralized black community, and that entire Fifth Ward was zoned D2, which told the banks, do not lend, we're not going to put any mortgages in that area, we're not going to invest in that area for economic development. The write-up on that said this is a heavily Negro population and avoid it at all costs, basically. And that informed for generations how real estate agencies engaged in the community, how banks engaged with residents that live in those zoned areas, whether or not you could get a loan or not get a loan. And if you did get a loan, maybe that interest rate is much higher than in other areas. So that put together, kind of set up decades and generations of divestment in an area, in depressing areas, and then also develops a stigma. Look at this poor community, they can't do anything on their own. Well, they're blocked from everything.
Hallelujah. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. As I lay my burden down. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I lay my burden down.
Evanston's black population is shrinking. Lawmakers argue that black families are being priced out of the city due to higher cost of living and stagnant wages. Leaders are hoping reparations can remedy disparities in home ownership that date back to segregation. Banks approved nearly 1,500 mortgages to home buyers in Evanston in 2019. Fewer than 100 of those went to black applicants. This is mirrored across the United States, where black families own fewer homes than did 30 years ago.
One of these syllables makes a real word to complete the sentence. Watch first.
Like many in town, Fifth Ward resident Jasmine Edwards is on the verge of being priced out of the city. What would you like to see from the reparations that they're trying to implement here in Evanston?
I would like to be a homeowner. I would like to get something consistent for me and my children to the point where we're not moving every year. If I was to get any part of the reparation, at least for housing, we could do magic with that.
You're going through some hardships. Other folk, sometimes they can't afford to pay rent. This reparation stuff, what makes you think black folks are more deserving than anybody else?
We're all deserving. It's just that black people clearly wasn't deserving for so many years. I just feel like I'm repeating what my mom did, what her mom did, and so forth. I'm a crybaby. I'm such a crybaby. Because my situation is real. This is a real situation, and there's so many of us. This is the Fifth Ward. I don't know what that means to anybody else, but this is an area where, we all struggle together. I just need a push. How you get on a bike? And your mom gotta push you.
They push you down.
Yeah, I just need one of those.
You can pedal on your own, but you need a push.
Exactly, and that's what reparation means to me. It's just a little push.
Fifth Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons is overseeing the rollout of the program. But for a community with varying needs, not one size is going to fit all. When some people hear about reparations, they think 40 acres and a mule. What does reparations in Evanston look like?
It's important when you do reparation work that the injured community is leading the decisions. There were hundreds, definitely dozens of specific recommendations in various ways.
So today we have our first discussion on remedy. As we work through this reparation process,
there were several recommendations presented to prevent black residents from leaving Evanston to help them build generational wealth. So far, the city has approved $25,000 for eligible individuals to use as down payment assistance to help buy a home, or for existing black homeowners to use for renovations or pay down their mortgage.
So we're talking a benefit that is equivalent to cash. It will be for home buyers that are mortgage qualified. And with that being a concern, we already have inequities in, lending. There's predatory lending.
About to say, that's layered, right?
There's so many layers to it. The more work we do, the more we uncover is needed and the more demand there is.
One of the issues when it comes to reparations is when Black folks hear it, they're like, it's never gonna happen. And when white folks hear it, they're like, we ain't paying for it because we didn't do it, right? So where is this money coming from?
Our city is different. We have said yes to reparations. We had an 8-to-1 vote in favor of reparations, and we are funding it with recreational cannabis sales tax.
So to be clear, it's coming from weed sales.
Yes. Adult recreational cannabis sales tax revenue, weed sales. And that's so appropriate because in our city, 71% of our marijuana arrests were in the Black community, and we are just about 16% of the population. So we have suffered damages above any other community. If that industry is now legal, that it certainly needs to come to the benefit of those that have been most damaged by it.
On a national scale, reparations is controversial for a number of reasons. There's people trying to figure out how much money to give to whom. How do you determine who you give it to, who's Black, who's not?
So on a local scale, it's just as difficult. I look wide and far for an example on what to do, and it hasn't been implemented before. So right now, we have decided to move forward with residents that have lived in Evanston between 1919, where we have Black racist zoning policy on our books, 1969, when fair housing was passed, or a direct descendant of someone during that time. Now, in the case of those that aren't legacy families, they can show housing discrimination. And I've asked that our law department come up with a list of ways that a Black resident can show housing discrimination so we don't put a burden on them to, fight a legal claim. But to that point about who is Black, those are details that we have yet to determine. For me, if you have checked the box of Black, if you have Black skin, then that shows that you have lived the Black experience.
What does a successful reparations initiative look like?
So although this is a victory, it's a huge commitment. We still have so much work to do, and the success comes when the empowerment comes in the Black community.
What happens if this doesn't work?
I don't believe that this is the answer to our complete justice and equity here in Evanston. I do believe it is a bold step that should be followed by other donors and institutions in this city. This took generations. It took a century for us to get to this position and these disparities. And it's going to take some time for us to work through it. So I'm not okay with us not trying. I'm not okay with us doing more ceremony and passing resolutions and proclamations that do not have an action plan or do not have a funding stream. It has to work. It's going to work. We're going to work together to get it done. We're going to stay committed, and it's going to take all of us.
The beautiful thing about that I love about her is she understands that it was an action item that actually had to take place, and she refused to allow the naysayers to prevent the forward progress. And I think that in our communities, we have to look at, what does it look like for us? What does it look like for you? How could it be developed? We have someone who said reparations will change the entire way business will be done. That's a true statement, because when you look at the word equality and you look at the word equity, there is a huge difference between the two. Something that is fair, equal across the board. That's where you're talking about equity. It's like looking at that photo of, you have three people that's standing at a fence. One person is tall enough to see over the fence. The other person has to stand on boxes. They're looking at it from each individual different levels, but they still have the ability to look over the fence, to look at the open area in front of them. And I think that is when equity is really taking place. From where you are, can you see it? From the position that you're in, are you actually working towards that particular goal? And I think that if every city began to look at in their foxhole, as we say in the military, we begin to look at where we are and look at what we have. And I think right now, because of there's so many different states that are right now in a reset or a refit per se. So because you're in a refit and because you're in a reset, I do believe that every city should go through its very own disparity study. So from that disparity study is actually going to show you where you're right, where you're at right now currently, because one of the things that Evanston is doing is within the fabric of their reparations, they're actually their goal is to try to keep Black people there. Now, I don't know how successful they're going to be in doing that because, there's a lot of people who left again. So if I'm offering you an incentive to stay, then that necessarily is not going to keep you there. But you have to look at what are the pros and cons of reparations for your city. But again, I think it still falls on the ground of equity. And I think that's really going to really move things forward. So I just wanted to get on and talk about it to show you that reparations, the conversation has been had. Again, California passed their very own, Asheville, North Carolina passed theirs, and in Eatontown, Illinois passed their reparations law. So I think that the ball is moving. How long will it take for it to get up to the Supreme Court? I don't know. But I think we just need to look at where we at with it at the local level. When we pay attention to where we are and what we're doing at the local level, then we really begin to affect change, because you can reach out to your mayor and shake your mayor's hand. It's going to be kind of hard to reach out to your governor and get to that individual, or get to your state, to your senators and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to get to that level. But let's start at the local level to see where we can affect that particular change, and let's begin to move from that standpoint. So again, I think every city right now, because they're going through their reset or they're going through their refit, because a lot of them is opening back up, I think you should start at executing a disparity study just to see where you are. Because from that from that disparity study, it will let you know where the issues lie, or where your starting point actually begins, and then you can start from an equitable state from that disparity study. Whatever the cost of a disparity study, there's benefits to it on the back end. It may not be right now, but there's benefits to it on the back end, and I think that is where it's going to be completely beneficial to all of the parties that are involved with the entire disparity study itself. So again, I just wanted to jump on. You guys be blessed. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Remember, tomorrow